The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting golden hues on the thick forest that surrounded the travelers. The Buddha walked ahead, his footsteps steady, leading his disciples through the dense, whispering trees. Rajan, a young disciple with restless eyes, approached the Buddha, bowing low, and then spoke in a strained voice. "Master, my mind is filled with ceaseless turmoil," Rajan said. The disciples sat in a circle around the Buddha, their robes touching the dew-kissed grass beneath them. The Buddha closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, the air thick with the scent of damp soil and blooming wildflowers. "My beloved disciples," the Buddha began, his voice calm as the flowing streams of the forest. "Listen to a tale of loss. Once, in a distant village, there was a man who owned a thriving orchard," he said, his eyes remaining closed. This man tended to his orchard with care, nurturing each tree as though it were his own child. The Buddha continued, "But one year, an unrelenting storm swept through his village, destroying the fruits of his tireless labor. The man, overcome with despair, spent his days lamenting his misfortune beneath the broken branches," the Buddha narrated, as he wept. A passerby, wise and old, saw the man's grief and stopped to offer his counsel. "Why do you mourn over what nature has reclaimed?" the old man asked, his voice gentle and soothing. The man looked up, his tears falling silently, and replied, "I have lost everything I worked so hard for." He opened his eyes, the light within them steady, like the first star emerging from behind parting clouds. "Your mind is that lake, Rajan," he explained. "The storm is your attachment, your refusal to let go of turmoil." Rajan looked down, his thoughts racing, yet a glimmer of understanding flickered in his expression. "Like dawn breaking. But master, the storm feels endless," Rajan said, his voice low, "and I don't know how to let it end." The Buddha smiled, the kind of smile that felt like a gentle wind dispersing dark clouds in a tired sky. He began to see his orchard not as a graveyard of loss, but as fertile ground for fresh beginnings. The Buddha opened his eyes and surveyed the disciples, who absorbed the story in contemplative silence. "It reminds you that storms pass." The disciples followed his words, closing their eyes and focusing on the rhythm of their breaths. Soft and steady, grief, when held too tightly, becomes a cage that confines us, blocking the light of wisdom and renewal. Instead, let us embrace loss not as an end, but as the soil from which new life grows, the Buddha advised. The disciples sat still, their hearts resonating with the teachings that flowed like a river into their minds. One of them, a young monk with a troubled heart, raised his hand and asked the Buddha a question. "Master, what if the loss is too great, and the pain refuses to fade with time?" The monk asked sincerely. The Buddha turned his gaze toward the young monk, his eyes filled with compassion and understanding. "Pain, my dear one, is an echo of our attachment, a bond we carry long after the cause has passed," he said. "To heal, we must not push the pain away, but sit with it, offering it the stillness of our presence. Clarity arises not from fighting chaos, but from surrendering to stillness." The disciples sat in awe, some with tears gently tracing paths down their cheeks, their burdens momentarily lighter. In stillness, you too will uncover the fertile ground within yourself, ready to nurture new seeds of understanding. The young monk lowered his gaze, nodding softly, the heaviness in his heart starting to dissipate like morning mist. The Buddha folded his hands and continued, his words reaching every heart like the warmth of the rising sun. "When uncertainty clouds your vision, my disciples, return to the stillness beneath the Bodhi tree within your mind. Let the roots of your awareness anchor you, keeping you steady even when the winds of change blow fiercely. Stillness is not a withdrawal from life but an embrace of the present moment with clarity and peace," he said. As the evening light softened, bathing the banyan tree and its companions in gold. The teachings settled like gentle rain. Rajan, now seated still as the roots of the tree, whispered words meant more for himself than for others. The disciples listened intently, their breaths synchronized as they absorbed the Buddha's wisdom under the ancient Bodhi tree. The sounds of the forest, the chirping birds and rustling leaves, became a symphony that complemented the profound stillness. In the silence that followed, each disciple meditated on their own attachments, their own storms, and their stillness. The sun climbed higher, its golden rays filtering through the canopy, bathing the disciples in light and warmth. The Buddha remained seated, his presence a steady beacon in the ever-changing currents of the natural world. Thus, the first lesson unfolded, teaching them that stillness is the anchor amidst the chaos of life's storms. Another day, another path led the Buddha and his disciples toward the flowing banks of a restless river. The waters danced wildly, swirling and crashing against the rocks that lined its uneven, muddy shore. The group paused, their eyes fixed on the turbulence, sensing an unspoken lesson waiting within the rushing currents. The Buddha, calm as ever, stepped forward and seated himself upon a large, smooth stone near the river's edge. "My dear disciples," the Buddha began, his voice steady as the river was wild. "Look at this water before you. Notice its movement, its relentless churning, as though it struggles against unseen forces to maintain its course," he continued. A young disciple, curious yet hesitant, asked, "Master, why does the river appear to fight against its own flow?" The Buddha smiled and pointed to the debris being carried downstream, caught in swirls before moving on once again. Like the river, our minds often carry debris, thoughts, doubts, fears, that cloud clarity and stir restlessness, the Buddha explained. When the mind struggles against its own currents, we become like this river, unable to see through the murky waters. The young disciple nodded, yet his brow furrowed in confusion, longing for guidance to navigate his own inner rivers. The Buddha gestured toward the river again, this time focusing on a calmer section further downstream. "Observe here, where the water flows gently, untroubled by the rocks or fallen leaves that surround it," he said. In its stillness, the debris has settled, revealing the clarity that lies beneath its surface. He observed softly, "But Master," another disciple interjected, "how can the mind become still when doubt and fear persist like an endless storm?" The Buddha regarded the disciple with compassionate eyes and answered, "Stillness does not come from forcing the storm to end. Instead, stillness arises from sitting within the storm, observing it without judgment, until its fury begins to dissipate. Be the witness, not the fighter, allowing your doubts to float by like leaves carried on the river's current. Wealth, power, and even relationships, they are shadows, impermanent and bound to vanish." Anila's expression softened, her burden lifting slightly, though doubt still lingered like the fading whispers of a storm. "Master," she said hesitantly, "if all things are transient, where does peace reside? How can we reach beyond desire's grasp?" The Buddha smiled faintly, his presence a soothing balm, his words forming a bridge between the known and the unknown. "True clarity arises when you see beyond the distortions of desire," he replied. "When you embrace the essence of life." One disciple, previously silent, spoke up, asking, "But Master, what if the mind refuses to quiet and remains clouded indefinitely?" The Buddha turned his gaze toward the disciple, the branch still floating in the water beside them. "When the mind resists clarity, it is calling for patience, not force," the Buddha said, his tone gentle. "Patience allows the storm within to exhaust itself, revealing truths that cannot be hurried into existence." He continued, "The silt in the river cannot be removed by hands. It settles on its own, leaving the water transparent. The disciple lowered his head in contemplation, the wisdom of patience settling into his heart like the silt beneath. The Buddha folded his hands and remained silent, allowing the sounds of the river to speak their own lessons. Anila's eyes brightened slightly, the cracks in her heart beginning to heal as she clung less tightly to her illusions. But Master, Rajan interjected, what if the world tempts us, drawing us back into desire's illusion despite our efforts? The Buddha nodded thoughtfully, his demeanor unchanging, as though he had foreseen the struggles each disciple would inevitably encounter. Each disciple meditated on their inner turbulence, seeking the stillness that lay hidden beneath their restless minds. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the Buddha addressed them once more, his voice filled with warmth. My dear ones, you are like this river, ever moving, ever changing, carrying pieces of life along your journey. He began. The journey itself is not defined by the turbulence, but by how you embrace the calm when it appears. The currents of your mind may stir now, but they too will settle when clarity is allowed to blossom. Trust the flow of life, just as the river trusts its path, even when obstacles arise, the Buddha said. And when doubt seems insurmountable, remember that truth lies not in the fight but in the quiet observation. The disciples absorbed the teachings, their hearts beginning to feel lighter as the river carried their burdens downstream. The Buddha stood and motioned for the group to follow, leading them across the river toward the next path. As they crossed, each step brought a new understanding, the river's teachings intertwining with their own inner rivers. To break free from its hold, he continued, you must cultivate wisdom, for wisdom is the light that dispels illusion's darkness. The disciples sat in silent reverence, their teacher's words weaving through their thoughts, illuminating paths hidden beneath layers of confusion. The mountain rose high above the earth, its peak hidden beneath layers of swirling mist and drifting white clouds. The disciples paused at the base of the mountain, their faces filled with wonder and apprehension as they gazed upward. The Buddha turned to face them, his calm presence anchoring their wavering courage in the face of the imposing climb. My dear ones, the Buddha began, his voice steady, this mountain is not merely a challenge, it is also a teacher. The path before us may appear treacherous, but within its trials lies the wisdom to overcome fear, he continued. The disciples exchanged uncertain glances, each wrestling with the unease growing within their hearts as they stood at the base. One disciple, trembling, asked, Master, how can we ascend when fear looms so heavily within us, clouding our every step? The Buddha smiled gently and pointed to a small bird perched serenely on a rock near the base of the mountain. Behold this bird, he said, his tone warm. It does not fear the mountain because it trusts its own wings. As night fell, the disciples returned to their lives, their hearts lighter and their minds quieter. Though their journeys were far from over, another day would come, another lesson, and another step toward clarity in the chaos that defined the world they inhabited. It shrouds the path ahead, making us doubt the strength we already possess to journey onward, he explained. Fear itself does not harm us, but our attachment to its illusions can paralyze us from taking the first step. The air carried the whispers of spring, a calm contrast to the persistent questions residing in the hearts of the seekers. Dippa, a disciplined disciple with steady resolve, bowed before the Buddha and spoke with quiet determination, seeking guidance for her path. To ascend this mountain, we must trust ourselves. Just as the bird trusts its wings to navigate the unseen winds, let us not resist fear or fight it, but instead welcome it as a companion that teaches us strength, he said. The disciples exchanged glances, intrigued by the imagery, eager to grasp the significance of the Buddha's symbolic teaching. Another disciple, Rajan, asked, Master, what is this compass? And how can we find it within ourselves amidst all distractions? The Buddha raised his hand, pointing to the vast sky above, where stars shimmered faintly in the late afternoon light. To diminish fear, we must walk toward its source, bringing it into the light of our awareness, the Buddha explained. When we see fear for what it truly is, an illusion, it loses its power and becomes as insubstantial as mist. Master, does this compass consist of rules? Or is it something deeper within us? The Buddha smiled gently, his wisdom radiating through his serene demeanor. Virtue is not merely rules. It is the essence of integrity. Each step tested their resolve, the steepness and loose stones demanding their full attention and careful, deliberate movement. The Buddha walked with ease, his footsteps steady, as though the mountain welcomed his presence rather than challenging his path. At a narrow bend, the group paused, catching their breath and looking down at the winding path they had already traversed. The Buddha turned to his disciples and gestured to the view below, the forest now appearing small and distant. "Look at how far you have come," he said, his voice carrying a tone of encouragement. "Though fear tried to hinder you, each step you took, you left behind doubt and embraced the courage to move forward," the Buddha observed with a smile. The disciples nodded, a sense of accomplishment and newfound confidence beginning to replace the anxiety they had carried earlier. As they resumed their climb, a thick mist enveloped them, obscuring the path ahead and heightening their sense of vulnerability. The Buddha halted, and the group gathered close, their breaths mingling in the cool, damp air of the misty heights. "My dear ones, the mist is much like fear. It obscures the path but cannot alter its course," the Buddha explained. "Even when we cannot see the way forward, we must trust that the path exists beneath our feet," he said. "Each step you take in faith dispels the mist, revealing the clarity and truth that lie beyond its reach," he continued. "Compassion is giving, Suri, without seeking to possess or control," he added. "True compassion arises from understanding and seeks to ease suffering, not bind others or oneself in expectations. Trust in the mountain, and more importantly, trust in your ability to navigate its challenges," the Buddha encouraged. The disciples felt their spirits lift, the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings dissolving the weight of their doubts and worries. Together, they pressed on, each step becoming a testament to their resilience and the clarity emerging from within their minds. As the mist began to thin, revealing glimpses of the summit, the group felt a sense of relief and growing determination. The Buddha stopped once more, pointing to a sturdy tree growing from the rocky face of the mountain. "See this tree," he said. "Its roots grip the stone, defying the odds of its survival in this inhospitable place. The tree does not question the strength of its roots. It grows without hesitation, embracing the challenges of its environment. So must we root ourselves in our inner strength, growing toward wisdom even when the path seems uncertain," he said. "Virtue is the compass, Rajan, not the destination. Follow it faithfully," he continued. "Challenges may arise, but your compass will guide you toward actions aligned with your deepest understanding and inner peace." The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, their questions addressed but their journeys toward embodying the teachings only just beginning. The Buddha's voice softened, yet its impact remained potent. "The compass is not an external force. It resides within you, ever steady. When fear clouds your path, remember this mountain and the lessons it shared with you on your journey upward." The disciples bowed deeply to the Buddha, gratitude and reverence filling their hearts as the sun set behind the horizon. Thus, the day ended, the lesson of courage and trust etched into their souls like the enduring strength of the mountain. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.